Hey guys, another video for our Crime and Emergency Services in Japan playlist. So I'll start with a confession. The confession is I broke a law and I was penalised for it. So it was 100% my mistake. I did the wrong thing and now I've got to pay the penalty. So now I'll tell you the story. The car you can see just to our right there is where my car was. So all the cars approaching this intersection have a stop sign, all of them. So you all have to stop and then you got to work out who to give way to, right? And in my case, where I was parked next where that car on the right there is, I had to turn right. So I had to sit here and wait until the cars that were coming from the left had all gone through and the ones that were coming from ahead of me had gone through, and then I could go ahead and go to the right. But all these roads keep feeding. So all these cars keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. So I'd done the right thing and I'd stopped at that stop sign. And then I turned right to go across where that crossing is, across the rail line there where that red car's going. And like the red car and the car behind him and the next car, I didn't quite stop 100%. I slowed down and then I went through, same as everybody else is doing, right? So except that guy, as I got to the other side of the intersection, I could see off it further down the road was a police car sitting there, and he'd been sitting there watching. And I turned off that road to go to my friend's house and looked in the rear vision mirror, and sure enough, there's the police car behind me with his lights flashing. They drive around with their lights flashing all the time, so that didn't mean anything. So I stopped at my friend's house and he pulled up behind me and came over and said, "You didn't stop at the crossing, at the rail crossing." And I said, "No, I stopped at the stop sign and made sure there was no cars coming in any direction, and then I turned right and went across the crossing." And he said, "Yes." And he said in English, "Perfect stop," he said. "Perfect to stop." And then he said in Japanese, "But you didn't stop at the rail crossing," which is fair enough. I didn't. So they wrote me a ticket. So just a little bit frustrating. I was pretty annoyed because, we show you videos every week of all the dangerous stuff that we see every week. The truck drivers doing dangerous stuff and Bolsozok doing dangerous stuff and lots of people doing dangerous stuff. They're all staring at their phones. And these guys were sitting there giving tickets. I wasn't targeted. I mean, you can see most of the cars, 90% of the cars aren't stopping either. So those guys would have just stopped there and just grabbed the first person they saw, which happened to be me. So I wasn't targeted because I'm a foreigner or anything like that. I was just happened to be the first one that came along after they got comfortable, probably. But as you can see, nobody's stopping, or very few are. Most people just sort of roll on through. So yeah, it was pretty annoying. It was like, and I actually said to him, I was trying not to be angry because I'd done the wrong thing and I was getting a penalty. And I said, and Japanese police are always very polite. I've never met a policeman here that wasn't polite and professional. He's very polite and professional. And I said to him, "Do you think it was dangerous?" Because I watched all four directions, all to make sure all the other three directions to make sure no one was coming. And then I went across and I said, so I was being very careful. I said, "I drive like an old man. I was being very careful. Do you think what I did was dangerous?" And he said, "No, but you have to stop." Right. And then the funny thing was he said something else in English and I said to him, "Oh," and then I said in English to him, "I think your English might be better than my Japanese." And that's just a thing that I say, right? I've got a habit. If someone speaks English, doesn't matter how poor it is, I say that because I find that people like it if you say that to them. It's just sort of in Japanese culture, it's a sort of a cool thing to say, that my Japanese is really bad and your English is much better. So I said that to him. And then as soon as I said that, we were great buddies. He was being really friendly. And eventually they wrote the ticket and gave me the ticket. And I went into my friend's house, which were right outside. So I went into my friend's house that him and his wife and kids had been watching from the window. So I went inside. They all had a good laugh at me and I sat down at the table. And then a couple of minutes later, the copper came in through the door into the Genkan and called out my name. And I went to the Genkan and said, "Yes." And he said, "What country are you from?" And I didn't like it because I thought it was an official question. And I didn't like it. I said, "Is that important?" And he said, "Oh, I just want to know what country you're from." And I said, "I'm from Australia." And I said, "Is that important? Why do you need to know that?" And he said, because I was struggling a bit to be cool, I kept, in the back of my head was Bosozoku, Bosozoku, because I've always wanted to ask the Japanese cop how many tickets they've given to Bosozoku, because you can bet it's none. and how many tickets they've given to truck drivers, because that'd be very few too. But anyway, that was in the back of my head, you know. So he'd used up all my patience. I said, is that important? And then he said to me, it was all in Japanese now, and he said to me, I wanted to tell my boss that the foreigner said my English was really good, and I wanted to know what country you were from so I could tell my boss. Can you believe that? He felt so good about me saying that, about how good his English was, that he wanted to go back to the police station and tell his boss that this foreigner that he'd given a ticket to told him how great his English was. I mean, he was really kind. Look, I didn't stop fully at that crossing, and I got a penalty for it. 100% my mistake. The cop was professional and very polite and wanted to be buddies. So the penalty was 7,000 yen, which is $70, which is really painful. I don't have a spare 7,000 yen to throw at this. The other problem is that when you get a penalty, the next time you renew your driver's license, you have to go to the mandatory safety course where you have to sit for 3 hours and be lectured and watch videos and all sorts of stuff like that. We've talked about that before. That's painful too. so anytime you get a penalty here from the police, it's not good. It compounds into all sorts of problems. But I did the crime, so I've got to do the time. In the meantime, Boss Ozoku and dangerous truck drivers and people staring at their phones and kids standing on the passenger seat of cars with their faces against the airbag, it continues to go on. But I'm going to stop at every railway intersection I come across. Anyway, it's fair. More videos coming soon.